Okay, so we've got this far. Now let's work at implementing this pagination component. So we're going to start with some sample code from Bootstrap 5.2, and the one we're going to implement replaces disabled or inactive links with spans. Apparently that's better. So what I'm going to start with is a component named pagination, and I'm going to use a plugin that I've just started using, which is this one, and we're going to call it pagination. That's good. And we're just going to paste this in, and I'm going to change the area label to CakePHP4 Inertia.js React pagination. Okay, so this pagination component is going to pull in the pagination. As we can see, we've got this paging from the server, and we're going to use that to build the pagination. So it's going to pull in paging. The first one we can do, low-hanging fruit if you like, is the currently active page. So if we just reload now, before we do that, of course, we need to go pagination, and we need to put paging here. So our first thing, we're currently on page 1000 of this, and so we have our active link here. Now we want to start, let's start with previous and next links and first and last links. Now what we need to do now is start to put some smarts into the here. So we need some way of creating this link. So each one of these links we need to be able to create that with a component. So we're going to create a new file called pagination link.js, and that's going to be React CE, I think that's it. And what's this going to look like? Well, it's going to start simply, but then it's going to become a lot more complex. So what we want to do, we need to be able to say pass into the component the label. We also want a href, or a page number, so which page number are we going to head to. We might want to say whether it's active or not, and so all these things need to be passed in for this pagination to work. So we're going to start that with passing in a page, a label, whether it's active, and at some point in the future we might have title, so when you hover over it, it'll give you a bit of information as well. Now in this component, we're always interested in the search string in the browser, so we're going to pull in the window location search here, and what we're going to do is we're going to set our query string of page to whatever we pass in, because that's what we're going to need to do. Now, as we mentioned with this pagination, some create spans and others are going to be links. So by default, let's just create a link so that it will be a span, sorry. So our link will be just a span, and it will display the label, label that we need. But if it's an active link, it must be, then the link must be a inertia component, so we call that page link. And the href is going to be just this, and if we pop this in, for some reason it just automatically converts it to a string, so that's good. And then after we do that, we have to put the label, and we've got that there. So I'll just make that a bit prettier. Alright, so by default it will be a span, but if it's active we'll create a link. Now when we are developing this particular pagination link component, we need some active class names as well, so we're going to import class names, and we're going to create and pass in an object. It's always going to have a page item class. It's going to have a disable class when it's marked as not being active, and we might add a little bit more later to it. But what we want here is a link list item. We might put a key in here, and the key can just be the page number. We want our class names to be whatever's within our li classes, and if in future we pass in a title, we'll put a title in there. And then finally, here is where we're going to embed our link. So the question is have we done enough so that we can use this pagination link to create links? Let's look at our first example of that. So we're going to create pagination link, and what did we say we had? What things did we have there that we need to define? Well, first obviously we want to say, well, the link's going to be to a certain page. So this is one is going to be to our first page. We're going to call this first as the label, and we're going to mark it active as long as there's no more, as long as there's a previous page, it's going to be true. So let's have a look and see if that first thing is working. So we're on page 1001, and you can see the URL when I hover over it, and now it's jumped to page 1. But notice that at the moment when I click on page 1, it hasn't. So let's go to page 30 again. So we click on it, it goes to page 1, and it's still active. So what have we done wrong there? So we need to go back into pagination link, and maybe that was wrong. Yeah, so we've now got that correct. So choosing, just looking at that again, we can just choose go first. Alright, so now we've got jump to first working. Let's do get going to the last page working. So we want, this one will be paging.page count, I believe it is. and this one will be last, and obviously this will be next page, so our last link will be. So now we've got those working. So we've got first and last, so we can now jump between first and last. I'd also like a next and a previous, so let's put in a next. So we say the next page is, sorry, the previous, this will be the previous page. Previous, and it will be paging dot page -1. So that looks right, and we want to do the same thing for this one. We want to say next. Again, as long as there's more pages, we want next to be available, and for this one it will be +1. So let's have a look at that and see if we've got next and previous links. We do. Right, and now one of the things that this particular, the CakePHP one does, is when it jumps to the end, it doesn't display the last one. It just has a blank next. So we might change that so that, so we want it, the first and last want to be missing or hidden. Let's put some code in there to do that. So we might say, okay, for this one, if it's inactive, we don't want to display it. So how do we get that? Okay, so what we can do now, if we come up the top here and we can say, well, if the hide inactive is set, so we want to pull that in, of course. So we've got hide inactive. If that's set and it's not active, just return nothing. So before everything happens, just return nothing. Now hopefully, as we look at it, so we go to the last and the first. Maybe we need to reload first, and now it works. So yeah, so we go first and last, but then it just disappears when there's no job for it to do. So that's good. We're jumping through. We're doing well here. Now, what is our next step? We've done those. Now we need to create this concept of siblings. So in the demonstration one that Cake makes, we've got, so when we go to here, we can see that there's 4 siblings. So let's set that up. So we want to say, okay, in our pagination we want there to be, let's do 3 siblings, and we'll call it siblings, and we need it to make a component that's going to generate those. So we want pagination siblings, and maybe we can create, and it's a RAF component, and that's pretty good. Now in this, we're going to take in the paging settings. We also need to know the number of settings, and we want to know if it's a before or an after. So that we'll be able to flag that. So we want to know if it's before, and we might remove it so there's only, if it's not before, it's after. So we'll call that is before. Now, how do we work this now? So we now want to get here, so we want pagination siblings, and we want to pass paging to it. We want to place the siblings, and this one is a before one, so that's going to change how it behaves, but let's do that. So what we want to do is we want to take our search params here and new URL search window, let's do that. And I'm not sure. No, we actually don't need that. I don't know why I would have thought that, but anyway, let's now go through and develop this pagination siblings code. So we're looking to firstly create some output. So I'm going to create a thing called out, and it's just going to be an empty array for the time being. And what I want to do is I want to go out.push onto that array, and I want to create an array from an array of this many siblings. And what we're going to do is that array is going to have don't remember the shape of the array, but there's a reason why I'm doing the way I'm doing this. But so we want to create a number, and we want to calculate a number from the current page we're on and the index that it's on as well. And then we want to say, well, we want that function to calc the number, and the number is going to, if it is a before one, we're going to return the number calc number first. I'm doing this wrong before. Yep. So what we want to do is take the number, and that's a page, so we'll call that page, and we want to go page plus whatever the index is, and minus the number of siblings. Otherwise, just return whatever the current page is active plus the index number plus 1. And we need to create that as siblings. Okay, so once we calculate that number, we need to do a check if that number is okay, and if it's not, we want to return null. So we go function compare number, and that number will be, if it is a before, we're going to return the number less than 1. Otherwise, we want to return number is greater than the page count. We're going to return true if that's, so if we're out of bounds, in other words, don't do anything. But if we're not out of bounds, return we might move this up here, return a pagination link with, and what do we need here? So return a pagination link with a page of the number. Key can also be number. Active is always going to be true. And the label we're going to add to it is this number. And maybe that's correct, but we certainly need to check whether it blows up or not. So let's have a look and see if we get siblings. No. So we look at for what we've done wrong. IDX is not defined. Function IDX, here we go. And we need to calc. So we've got that there. Hopefully now that will be right. So it seems that we have some mistakes here. We need to just fix that and make that React-ized. Let's just reload that. Now we don't seem to have our siblings showing up yet, so we're going to say pagination siblings. We want paging siblings and is before, and then we want 3 siblings. Let's have a look. Right, so if it's is before, oh, that's what we've forgotten to do. You probably noticed that before. We just need to return this array that we've pushed into. So let's now have a look and see if we've got 3 siblings. That's good. And see if it blows up. Now you can see there's something wrong here. Every time I click on the link, I'm getting a very annoying scroll. So go to Inertia Links and find where it explains preserve scroll, because this will make you really love the inertia framework. So now if I just reload that, and I'm scrolled right to the bottom here, but have a look what happens now with this. Now I just notice we've got another problem with class, so we'll just have a look for class. Seems, yeah, we've got an issue there, so we need to just change that as well, and hopefully we don't have error messages anymore. Okay, so now it seems like seems to be working. Let's, yep. Right, now let's now implement, we want pagination siblings, but this time we want to do, they're not before siblings, so we'll just remove that prop and see if we now reload, and then we get our 3 siblings. And it seems that we've got nice. Okay, so we've now got our pagination siblings working, and it seems to do what it should do, but there's something that I find, because I deal with maybe thousands of records, that there's no way you'd want to jump through if you were looking through. That's interesting. Okay, so it's now it's looking like it's not calculating something. We just better check that. So pagination siblings, but because it's not got is before set, that might cause an issue. Alright, let's see if that fixes it. So it should have siblings except when it gets right to the end, and that should add siblings, yeah, so that's good. So now we've got pagination working as per cake, but we're just going to add one more extra, which I find will be useful to me, is having the ability to do 50, 100, 200 steps. So I'm going to create a new file called pagination steps, and that file is going to have some logic in it that we're going to take in the paging settings from the server. We're going to take in how many steps we like to have, and if it's a before or after. So now we're just going to do some error checking. We'll say if array is array steps, that's good. If it's not, throw a new error and say steps must be an array of numbers, e.g. 10, 20, 75, whatever. Alright, so check if what's being passed in is an array, and if it is before, then we want to get the steps and sort them A, B sort, and we want to sort them, whoops, B minus A. Otherwise, we're going to sort the steps as A, B again, but the opposite direction, A minus B. So once you've done that, let's create a variable to hold our output. And what we're going to do is we're going to push onto this array and map through these correctly sorted steps, and with each step we're going to say, firstly we're going to check step is needed, because we don't want to create a link that's not needed, and if it's not needed, just return null. And then what we want to do is create a page number. So if it is before, we want paging page minus step, and then we also want to create a custom label. So if it is before, we want to have, and we're going to use string interpolation here and some fancy Unicode so that we can get what we want without running into HTML problems. So we're just going to type this in now. If is before, now we want the same here. This time it will be the steps first and a space, and then we want, for this one it's Unicode of 00BB, and that will become clear in a minute. So once that's created, we can then return a pagination link, and it's going to have a key of whatever we'll put in the number. We want it to always to be active, so we'll set that to true. We have a title in this one, and we'll say jump to page, no, jump, and we go step pages. Our label is what we've set up here as label, and finally we've got a page number here. So that's good. Now we need to, after we've looped throughout, we do need to return our output correctly there as well. Now, one thing we haven't done here is we haven't checked if needed. So we want to go function here, just and go check step needed, and we want to look at the step and say if it is before, well, return, this is a true or false. We're going to say paging page minus step is greater than 1. It's not greater than, if that's not true, then otherwise we need to return paging page plus step, and we need to check to make sure that's page count. So hopefully that now is correct. So if check step needed, if it's, well, that's actually check, we might if step is not needed, right, return null. Now hopefully this will work if we go and pop it into, let's see, we've got into pagination. So now we need to define our pagination steps here, so it's in between here, so we go pagination steps, and we need to define, now the steps are going to, let's make that into, so that we can maybe put it up here, const steps equals, now we might do 100, 200, 300, it could be whatever you want. You know, you might just want 20, 50, 100, or whatever you want, but you can add steps as you like. So you would now say, okay, we need to pass the paging through, have the paging details, and this one is definitely an is before, and the same thing now we need to remove the is before because it's not, and hopefully it'll blow up spectacularly and we'll go and figure out what's wrong. Unexpected token at line 31. Let's go have a look. So we've missed out a little bit of code there, it looks like. We didn't do the other case here. So paging dot page plus step. It's just the opposite. Okay, so maybe that will work. It does. Okay, so now we see we go to our first page, and it looks like I've put that in the wrong spot. Yet we want the steps after the siblings, we don't want them before. Now this is, it seems to be working, so we jump 50 pages and we jump 300 pages, and when we drop below the number of jumps we don't see that, so that seems to work quite well. Now finally, there is another something I want to do, and oh yeah, that was what I wanted to do. We've got this, it looks, you know, it's one piece of code, so let's make this so that it looks like everything else. So we'll just make this into a, we'll just use the pagination link and remove this. Now this one, we know that there is no page, so what we might do is we might say don't hide it inactive. Let's give this a prop so that it has the label. You probably don't need that prop, but the label you want is paging page, and it's always going to be active, so you would definitely want it to be active. So now we need to see if we can get this working, because a little bit more code, but it just gets rid of this. So we might include that as well. We'll see what we can do. So we need to now go into our pagination link and give ourselves this option to have a span only. So how does that work? Right, so if active, so if it's an active, we definitely want, alright, so we've got to change that. So if it's active, we want it to be a link, but if it's span only, we don't want it to be a link, so leave it as this. And then we want to add a class here as well, to add an active class, so that if it's active and it's span only, we get that. And when we wanted maybe we need to add I wonder if we can, maybe we'll look at how, if we can do that in a minute, but let's see if this this works. Is it still yes? And what we need from this pagination, we want the list, this to have an area, add a prop. Okay, so we want a prop, maybe active and span only. Can we do that? I'm not really sure. We might do that. We'll say active and span only, then give me, let's go back and copy this, add that. I don't know if this is going to work. Just flying blind at the present. Otherwise, just nothing. Aria prop equals that, and we don't need that, so we need to let, and we can put in here let. No, we need aria prop. Now, expected. No, unfortunately I've just tried this as a last resort here, but I don't know. Is it aria current? So I want to add this prop. So how do I add that conditionally? I just don't know. So I'll have to figure that one out. But that's something left for inspect, reload. Yeah, so we want to get rid of that. Maybe just quick Google React li prop optional adding. I don't know. That's not props. Okay, so I don't really know how to fix that, but this, so React optional props TypeScript no, so it's everybody's trying to do optional props. So this is an issue that I don't know how to well, let's do that. Let's do that'll work. So if it's that, maybe that will work. So if we want, and otherwise, let's try that. Maybe prop. Maybe. Let's see if that does the job. I did something there that I haven't tried before, so it's just no. What can we do here? Okay. I don't know. Yeah, that does it. So it's aria page current. Right, so that looks like it's got the, yeah, that's correct now. So now we have completed all our different options for using Inertia.js with Cake.php to do all sorts of things with regard to paging and pagination, and you can really sort of start to see once you apply things like preserve scroll and even giving yourself sorting abilities, you can do it with Inertia.js and React and using Cake as your back end. So I hope this is helpful to someone.